All right, welcome to the next lesson, all about finding your niche. Now, I'll be honest, this is something that every single creator I have ever met struggles with, from YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTokers, podcasters, writers, newsletter people, from 0 to 10 million plus subscribers, followers, billions of views. Every single person I've ever met and talked about this topic has struggled to some extent with finding their niche and to what extent that niche changes over time. Some of the common things are like, A, I don't know what my niche is gonna be. B, I have so many different interests that I don't know which one or two of them I should do. C, people are like, oh, well, people say that you should niche down to blow up, or the riches are in the niches, as all these like business podcasts say. But like, how do I find my niche? I'm a creator, I contain multitudes, and I don't wanna stick to one specific thing to create stuff about. Other issues with the niche thing that people have is that they start creating content in one particular type of niche, and then they get a little bit bored of that content. Or their audience gets a little bit bored of that content, and then they start thinking, okay, maybe I need to pivot, maybe I need to change my mind. Firstly, if you're going through these worries, don't worry, you're in good company. Like I said, every single person I've ever met who is a creator in any capacity, from 0 to millions of dollars in revenue, they all struggle with the niche question. There are no easy answers to the niche question, but hopefully in this lesson, I'm gonna teach you 3 different ways of thinking about the niche question. And the first one is gonna be something called the Hedgehog concept, which is from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a book that talks all about, kind of examines the difference between good businesses and great businesses. And one of his key insights is the Hedgehog concept, which we're gonna talk about. Secondly, we're gonna talk about the idea of core focus, which is something from this book, Traction. I'll be honest, Good to Great, amazing book, not directly relevant for most creators. Traction, also amazing book, not directly relevant for most creators until you have at least 3 team members, but the core focus stuff in this is absolutely fantastic. And then the third way we're gonna talk about how you can potentially think about finding your niche is something that I call the house model, which is something that me and my team have come up with for our own stuff based on all the stuff that we've read in other business books. So again, this isn't gonna be the absolute perfect formula for finding your niche, but hopefully these 3 different ways will give you 3 different ways of thinking about it. It'll probably generate more questions than answers in your mind, but we have a load of interactive exercises as well in the worksheet down below. And so let's get started with the Hedgehog concept, and that begins with a story. And there's this famous essay by this chap called Isaiah Berlin called The Hedgehog and the Fox. And he basically divides the world into 2 different types of people, like hedgehogs and foxes. And the way he tells the story is like, the fox wants to attack the hedgehog and wants to eat the hedgehog. But even though the fox is supposed to be really cunning and really fast and really clever and really good at all these different things, the hedgehog is good at one thing, and that is curling up into a ball and like sticking its spikes out. And anytime the fox comes in, as like, even with all the traps and stuff that the fox tries to set, all the hedgehog has to do is curl up into a ball, stick its spikes out, and then the fox can't do anything because the hedgehog is really, really, really good at doing that one thing really well. And the main moral of the story is that the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. And that is why Jim Collins called this idea the hedgehog concept. Basically, it's the idea of what is the one thing that you can do really, really, really well. What is the one thing that you can be a hedgehog in, whereas other people are trying to be foxes and are going to possibly be less successful because they're not that laser focused on one thing and doing one thing really well. And really the hedgehog concept is all about simplicity. How do we simplify the world into this one core skill that we or our business or our creator niche is going to be really good at? And the way Jim Collins describes it in the book is that there's 3 questions you have to answer for yourself to help figure out what is your core hedgehog concept. And the first one is about the idea of passion. And the question we want to ask ourselves is, what are you deeply passionate about? And whenever we do this exercise with students in a part-time YouTuber Academy, we ask them to spend 2 or 3 or 5 minutes just writing down as much as they can possibly think about in terms of bullet points into this question of what are you passionate about? What are your favorite things? What do you enjoy doing? What do you enjoy consuming, reading? What do you enjoy spending your time on? The other ways we can think about this is that we can ask ourselves, what keeps us working late? Like when we're in the office or when we're working away on our laptops or whatever we're doing, what are the things that we're doing that are making time feel like it's going by so fast? And we look at the clock and we realize, oh my God, I didn't realize it's past 11 p.m. already. What gets you excited when you're telling other people about it? What are the obsessions that you have within yourself that your friends are like, oh, there he goes again, talking about why everyone should be a YouTuber, or there she goes again, talking about why everyone should start a class on Skillshare, or whatever the thing might be for you. And another way is like, what do you actually look forward to doing? I'll be honest, in my life, I don't look forward to that many things because I feel like I've become fairly jaded over time. But one thing I do genuinely look forward to doing is whenever I'm teaching, whether it's teaching on YouTuber Academy, whether it's filming courses, whether it's teaching people in real life is my favorite one of the lot. That's always something that I end up looking forward to, even though it's technically work. So we've got a bunch of questions in the worksheet exercisey bit down below that are going to ask you more questions about this, but that's basically the idea of passion. Now let's move on to the second bit of the Venn diagram. And this one relates to the concept of expertise. And the question that Jim Collins asks in the book that applies to all these companies that have gone from good to great is, what can you be the best in the world at? Right now in the book, he's talking about like the best companies in the world, like the absolute great companies like Apple, companies like Gillette, other companies he's got in his sample study. And those companies do need to be the best in the world at whatever they're trying to do, because they are literally trying to be world-class in their things. The nice thing about being a creator is that you actually don't necessarily need to be the absolute best. And the nice thing about the creator economy is that there's a very good long tail of niches where if you're just pretty good within your niche, especially if you can combine multiple niches, which we're going to talk more about in a later lesson, especially if you can combine multiple niches, and as long as you're pretty good in your niche, that can actually be a strong competitive advantage. And so the way that I would actually think of this as a creator isn't so much what can you be the best in the world at, but more like what am I as a creator really good at? Or what would other people say that I am really good at if I wasn't trying to be modest myself? If you feel like you're not very good at anything just yet, then that's okay too. The question you want to ask yourself is, what do I have the potential to be really good at / best in the world / like really expert in? And so for me, if I think about what are the things I'm good at, I actually did this exercise in 2012 when I had just started university and I was looking to find some kind of business that I could use to recoup some money that I had lost on getting scammed out of like my life savings. That's a story for another time. But I asked these questions of like, what do I enjoy? What am I good at? And one of the things I landed on with what I'm good at is I think I'm pretty good at teaching, because I'd been doing it for like 5-6 years at that point, and everyone always said, oh, you're a really good teacher, you explain stuff really well. And I also knew that I was quite good at studying for exams because I'd managed to get into med school. I managed to do reasonably well in the entrance exams. I was also at the time reasonably good at making websites and coding. I was nowhere near the best in the world, but it was a skill that I had that I developed over the last 5-6 years of being in secondary school, and that was a skill I was good at. And so what I managed to do was be like, okay, I'm good at teaching, or rather, I think I'm good at teaching. I'm pretty reasonable at doing well in exams, and I did well in medical school entrance exams, and I know how to make a pretty looking website. And those three things combined to help me make my first business, which was called 6med, and that helped people get into med school by teaching courses on how to get into med school and marketed it through a website, which at the time was a website that looked better than any of the other competitors on the market. And that was how we managed to get market share as a new fledgling startup run by a bunch of kids, despite competing against all these big incumbents who'd been in the market for like 10+ years at that point. The thing that turned into 6med later turned into my YouTube channel, because the first videos I started to make on my YouTube channel were videos where I was teaching people how to get into medical school. And so I was combining my love of teaching and my ability to teach with my ability to teach these entrance exams, which I'd been doing for 5 years at that point when I started the YouTube channel. So I was clearly fairly well positioned as an expert in those fields, which is what I think was one of the reasons why it succeeded initially. And this speaks to something that we're going to talk about in a later lesson as well, around the idea of a competitive edge. That yes, it's all well and good that anyone can become a creator, and that the barriers for being a creator are going down, and anyone with their phone can just pick up a phone and decide, you know what, I'm going to be a creator, I'm going to start making videos on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram or start a blog. But the issue is that like, if we actually want to succeed, if we want to make money, if we want to treat this sort of stuff as a business, there's no getting around the fact that it is getting to be a competitive and crowded market. Everyone wants to be a creator. Everyone wants to be a part-time creator. Everyone wants to be a part-time creatorpreneur. Everyone loves the idea of being able to quit their job and like make their side hustle their full-time living. And especially with the pandemic recently, loads of people realized that reliance on a single source of income is not a very good way to live, because if you get fired from your job, you're kind of screwed. It's not a very anti-fragile way to live, to quote Nassim Taleb's terminology on that front. And so with any industry, the lower the barriers to entry are and the more like perceived fun or autonomy there is, these days, every kid wants to be a YouTuber. That means that the market is quite crowded and it is quite competitive. And so it's like, yes, back in 2006, if you'd started a YouTube channel and you were just making shitty quality vlogs about how you're brushing your teeth in your bedroom using a crappy camcorder, that would have worked, because that like the market was so non-crowded then. Now, like whenever you're watching this, the market is ridiculously crowded. There is still space to do well in it, but you do have to have a competitive edge. And that's why taking this question of expertise really seriously is helpful. Because if you're trying to be a creator in something that you're not already good at, or that you don't have the potential to be good at, like why would anyone waste their time watching you or consuming your stuff or reading your posts? It's just not gonna happen. And so we do need to take this question seriously. And so in the exercises area down below, we're gonna ask you a bunch of these questions. And one of them is also gonna be that, what do other people say I'm good at? Because often, my writing coach likes to say that you can't read the label from inside the bottle. We are inside the bottle and we can't read the label on the bottle. And so it often takes a third party, a friend or a family member or someone close to us to tell us, hey, you're actually really good at that thing. Maybe you should consider putting that as part of your expertise. Final thing I'll say on the expertise front is that although in Jim Collins' book, he kind of talks about it as being one thing, Again, the nice thing about being a creator is that you don't need to be an expert in just one thing. You can, in fact, be pretty good at a few different things. And in a way, we have our own like mini Venn diagram inside here. Whereas, let's say you've got 3 things that you're like top 20% or top 10% at. It's so much easier, by the way, to be top 10% in anything than it is to be top 1% in anything because of the diminishing returns that come through that. And like if you are top 10 or 20% in, for example, I don't know, teaching, public speaking, and explaining how to cook, suddenly the intersection in the middle is like, you don't have to be the best chef in the world. You don't have to be the best educator in the world. You don't have to be the best cinematographer in the world. But if you can be pretty good at all those 3 things, you could potentially create a substantial living from teaching people how to cook on a platform like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. So don't just think of your expertise as this is one and only one thing that I'm allowed to do for the rest of my life. Think of it as being reasonably good at a number of different things, and let's figure out what the intersection of those things is. And hopefully that is one way of helping us find our niche, coming back to Jim Collins' concept in Good to Great. Then we have the final bit of the Venn diagram, and that is the idea of value. And the way that Jim describes it is that you want to ask the question of what drives your economic engine. And so thinking about the answer to this from a creator perspective, really what this question is asking is, how are we going to make money from the thing? Yes, it's all well and good treating your creative side hustle as completely like a hobby, but this course is about being a creatorpreneur. It's about how do we treat it more like a business, and making money is a fundamental part of making a business. And so we do have to be honest with ourselves. How are we intending to make money through this space? Are we intending to monetize mostly through AdSense and through brand deals? Are we intending to monetize through the TikTok monetization fund whenever that ends up being a thing? Are we trying to monetize by selling courses? Are we going to try and monetize by selling coaching? Are we going to try and make physical products? Are we going to try and make digital products? What is our monetization strategy going to be? And hopefully, does the target audience that we're targeting, more on that in the next lesson, do they have the money to pay for the stuff that we're trying to do monetization from? In the cash flow section of the course, we're going to talk about loads of different ways to get monetized. And I've already got a bunch of YouTube videos on my channel that talk about dozens of different ways that you can monetize yourself as a content creator, as a creatorpreneur. But it is something that we do want to start thinking about fairly early on, especially if we're thinking about how to treat our side hustle more like a business. But this is definitely something that we want to be thinking about from the early days. We don't want it to stop us from creating content, which is why, we're still squarely in level 3, get smart. At this point, hopefully, if you're watching this, you have already started your side hustle and you've already gotten good at creating the content itself, because that's not what this course is about. This is about now applying a layer of smartness, getting smart, treating it like a business from insights from people who have done research on what makes a successful business. We do need to keep in mind exactly how we are planning to monetize, because it's all well and good creating all the content and being amazing at creating the content. But if we don't have a path to monetization, if the market is not rewarding us for that, it's very difficult to build a business off the back of something that no one else is paying for. Again, more exercises in the interactive worksheety area down below, which will ask you some questions around this sort of stuff. And you can see our cash flow module for a lot more on exactly how to monetize your audience in a non-scammy, non-spammy way. But the key thing behind the Hedgehog concept is, now that we've got this, we want to figure out what is that intersection of all 3 areas? And you probably saw this coming. When it comes to finding my niche, what are the things that I'm passionate about? What are the things I'm good at? And what are the things the market will reward me for? And if I can find a niche that's squarely within that Hedgehog concept, that Hedgehog area, that is a niche that I could potentially succeed in far more than a niche that doesn't have each of these 3 things being in the cross section of the Venn diagram. And so if we think about something like this course, for example, or on your YouTube channel, the Part-Time Creator Academy, what's the passion here? The passion here is that I really enjoy creator economy stuff. I love talking to content creators. Half my friends these days are friends I've made through Twitter and YouTube, like other creators and entrepreneurs. What do I have expertise in? Well, I've shown expertise in building up an audience over time. So I think I'm pretty good at actually doing the creator stuff. And I think I'm pretty good at teaching the creator stuff. And what is something that the market will reward me for? Well, hopefully you've bought this course. And so you've paid some money to learn from me to teach you how to do this stuff. Similarly, when you make content on YouTube, AdSense, brand deals, all that stuff, affiliates kind of automatically starts to reward you for expertise in a particular thing. And as long as people are watching the stuff and getting value from it, the monetization layer kind of takes care of itself for most things on YouTube anyway, because it's got such a mature monetization engine behind it. Let's think about a few other examples now. So the first one that I want to bring to mind is a chap called Chris Do, who runs an agency or website or media platform called The Future. Now, what is Chris deeply passionate about? Chris is deeply passionate about art, design, branding, graphics, marketing, and education. What does Chris do better than anyone else? Well, it's explaining these concepts in a way that is very digestible and very easy for normal people to understand. And what drives Chris's economic engine? Again, he can teach this sort of stuff. This is why being an educator on the internet is a generally very profitable way to go, because generally, if you are good at something, and you're good at teaching the thing, there's always kind of going to be a demand for other people wanting to learn that thing. So it becomes a very easy way to monetize, just like Chris has done through his courses and through his media products and through his consulting and coaching and all that stuff that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Next, we have a friend of mine called James Jarney, who is not monetizing through creating courses, unlike a lot of other people. James has grown from basically 0 to 1 million subscribers on YouTube in the course of a year by making very few videos, but he squarely found his Hedgehog concept. And so for James, the thing that he was passionate about is that he enjoyed talking about money, he enjoyed talking about businesses, he enjoyed analyzing businesses and how they worked and how they made money. He really enjoyed documentaries and storytelling, and he decided that he was going to learn how to do video editing completely from scratch. Now, what does James have the potential to be better than anyone else in the world at? The answer to that is actually video editing and storytelling. And crucially, he did not have any kind of background in those things at all. He did something completely random at university. He just taught himself how to edit videos, and he learned on the job. And the way he stood out in a crowded market was just spending hundreds and hundreds of hours on every single video, whereas normal YouTubers would spend 4 hours or 8 hours editing a video. James Jarney was spending 400 or 800 hours editing a single video. And so even though he was not the best in the world by skill level, he became like world class just by virtue of the fact that he put so much time into each of his edits. And then what drives his economic engine? Well, he's got sponsors on his videos, he's got AdSense on his videos. The topics that he's talking about lend themselves to higher CPMs, so he's making decent amounts of money on YouTube ads. And he's also got a Patreon where it's like a membership thing where his fans are so appreciative of the effort he has put into editing his videos and the fact that he's not really selling them stuff, that they are willing to support him on Patreon for a monthly membership fee, and that drives a large amount of revenue for him. And one thing that's going to be helpful to do as we do our market research and competitor analysis, which we're going to do 2 lessons from now, is really thinking about, for the creators that you admire, for the creators who have built profitable businesses off the back of their creative side hustles, what is their Hedgehog concept? What is the thing that they've been passionate about? What drives their economic engine? And what is the thing that they have the potential to be the best in the world at? And then, crucially, how can we take lessons from that and apply it to our own creative hustle thing? So that was one way of finding a niche. Like I said, there are 2 more. Let's now talk about the idea of a core focus. And the idea of a core focus comes from this book, Traction. Basically, every single business book has some kind of terminology for this concept. You know, Dan Sullivan calls it your unique ability. Jim Collins calls it your Hedgehog concept. Gino Wickman calls it your core focus. It really doesn't matter what terminology you use. I just think it's useful to have a few different models for this, because if one model in particular doesn't gel with you, then another one might. And the reason they call it the core focus is that core because it comes from your company's core, or it comes from your own core as an individual entrepreneur, and focus because you are laser focused on it. And there's actually a quote from Steve Jobs that talks about this. He says, "I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things we have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. You have to pick carefully." And so the idea of core focus, Hedgehog concept, all of this stuff, in a way, it helps us laser down on what is the thing we actually want to create content about and what's the business we actually want to build. But crucially, anything that falls into not that core focus is stuff that we probably shouldn't be wasting our time doing. This is something Mr. Beast famously said in an interview recently. He said that there are so many creators that he sees that blow up to millions of subscribers, and then they start doing all sorts of different things. They forget about the core focus that made them grow in the first place, and they start doing kind of all sorts of merch, products, and this and that, things that their audience did not sign up for when they subscribe to them, things that they're not potentially the best in the world at, and then that causes them to lose focus, and then all of their channels start to slowly die because they're not being focused on the thing that really matters. This is genuinely a tricky thing for us, you know, like when you get to a certain size and you have a team, it's like there's all these different opportunities. Yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. People email you with all sorts of cool stuff. But by doing the core focus exercise in Traction, and by working with one of their official business coaches who charges like $3,000 a day, which is actually pretty good ROI for us, and we try our best to say no to anything that doesn't fit directly inside that core focus. So what is the core focus? Well, it involves asking yourself 2 questions. The first one is, why does your organization exist? What's its purpose, cause, or passion? And like, again, this applies specifically to businesses, but you can think of it as like your own creator mission statement as well. Even if you don't have a team, you are a company of one. Good Paul Jarvis book called Company of One, would recommend reading. But even if you don't have a team, you're a company of one, and you can start thinking of yourself as a company. And if you were thinking of yourself as a company, why does your company exist? What's its purpose, cause, or passion? Now for us, we spent ages like brainstorming this, trying to figure out what are we actually about. And we landed on the fairly cringy cliche phrase of, we help people live their best life. Ugh. It is true, it's what we're trying to do. All of our content, all of our stuff is focused on helping people trying to live their best life. And if you can find that thing for yourself, it becomes easier to help figure out what is going to fit inside your niche. And I want to share a little 8-part checklist that they've got in the book Traction about, when do you know you've got the right purpose, cause, or passion? So 1, it's stated in 3 to 7 words. 2, it's written in simple language. 3, it's big and bold. 4, it has an aha effect. 5, it comes from the heart. 6, it involves everyone, not just you. 7, it's not about money. And 8, it's bigger than a goal. And so I think for us, like, we help people live their best lives, or helping people live their best lives, words to that effect, that actually ticks all 8 of these boxes. And you might want to do some experimentation to find what it is for you that you think, yeah, this is really what I'm about. And this is the sort of thing I can imagine myself continuing to do forever. Maybe the content will change, but the core mission, the core purpose, the core cause behind what you're doing, ideally shouldn't really change over time. We'll talk more about that in the house model. And if you want to read the book or the summary of the book, which we've got down below, it'll show you some examples of different purposes, causes, or passions. Admittedly, it's all focused on the business world, very much kind of American small businesses of $3 to $50 million in revenue. But like, you can see how you can apply it as a creator yourself. And then with core focus, and this is somewhat confusing, the second question they ask is, what's the niche? And that is sort of the question we're trying to answer here. When they say niche, they don't mean what specific content are you trying to create. What they mean is, how are you fulfilling your core thingy, passion, purpose, cause, whatever the thing is. So for us, it's we help people live their best life. And then the niche is like how. So like the purpose, cause, or passion is like why or what you're trying to do, sort of. And the niche is how you're trying to do it. And so for us, our niche is by creating inspiring educational content. This is, again, a thing that we went back and forth on with the whole team, sort of deep diving into my own soul to figure out, what do I actually care about? And I think it's creating inspiring educational content. And maybe we're going to add some level of like community, because we also want to build a community around our stuff. But crucially, it's like inspiring educational content. It's not inspiring educational products. And so when we create physical products, we are doing something that is outside of our core focus. We have created physical products. It didn't do overly well. It just about broke even. We had like a whole stationery line. It was kind of fun to do, but it was admittedly a bit of a side hustle. And if we'd been more laser focused on our core focus, it was not a good business decision to try and make physical products. It was just a bit of fun. And so the nice thing about once you figure out what your core focus is you can run every different idea through the lens of, does this fit into my core focus? Does it help people live their best life through inspiring educational content or not? And if the answer is no, then you want to think very, very, very hard before committing to doing something, especially if you are a smaller creator, you don't have a team around you, and therefore any amount of time that you spend working on your creative hustle is precious time that could be spent working on the business, working on actually growing the thing, rather than doing a little side gig just because you feel like it. So let's use a few different examples of creators so we can see how this core focus question would work. So one of my friends has a channel called The Doctor's Kitchen, and his why does your organization exist thing is to help people live healthier lives, or something like to help people take their health more seriously, to help people look after their health. And then the niche, or how he does it, is by creating educational content that inspires people to eat healthier, or by creating educational content focused around healthy recipes, or by creating recipes that people can follow in an easy, fun, tasty, healthy kind of way. Like, he's not quite workshopped this yet. I've recommended this book to him, and he's now going through these various exercises to figure out, what is his core focus. But he has a pretty good idea, because he really is passionate about the healthy eating thing, helping people take care of their health. And he knows that his niche, for now, is going to be recipes that help people eat healthier. Let's say you're an entertainment person. Let's take David Dobrik, for example, who does purely entertainment vlogs. Complete other end of the spectrum from sitting down, talking to a camera, educational content. His organization's purpose, passion, or cause is going to be something like to add more happiness to the world, or to add more joy to the world, or even to help people have a good time, because he's focused on entertainment rather than education. He wants to entertain people while they're watching his videos. And so his niche here is going to be something like through creating entertaining vlogs. Now, again, this might seem really simple. My organization exists to entertain people by creating entertaining vlog content. And it is really simple. And when you find your core focus, you're going to think, this is a bit too simple. Maybe it's supposed to be a bit more complicated than that. But the nice thing about having a core focus is that all of the extra questions around what sort of content should I create, they help serve your core focus. So it wouldn't really make much sense for David Dobrik to create an educational course teaching people how to take their creator side hustle more seriously, because it's very much outside of his core focus. The thing he's good at is entertaining people through vlog content. He's branching out into podcasts, and that's awesome because he's still focusing on entertainment rather than education, but it would definitely be outside of his core focus to do things that are not related to that. Again, more exercises and stuff in the worksheet interactive area down below, but now I want to take you to the final version of how to help figure out what your niche is, and that is something that we call the house model. And this is kind of based on Simon Sinek's concept of he's got this book called Start With Why, where he talks about these 3 concentric circles. We start with why, and then we have how, and then we have what. And it's like, to find our niche or to find the niche of a company or a creator company or whatever, you start with why, and then you think about how, and then you think about what. And for example, if we take Apple as a company, when Simon Sinek explains what they do, he says, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. And we happen to make great computers. Do you want to buy one? So they're starting with why, that we exist to help people think differently. How is by making incredible products that are beautiful and simple to use. And then what is like hardware, software, services, that kind of thing. Now, this is all well and good. The way we have adapted this, in our little house model is by thinking of it in 3 layers. The first one is like the foundation of the house, and that is the why. That's the why behind what we do. Next, we have the house itself in terms of like structurally, it's got some rooms in it, it's got a roof, that kind of thing. And that is more like how we're doing it. And then we have furniture in the house, like, I don't know, a wardrobe or a sofa or like a bed or like a TV or whatever you want to use for your furniture. And the furniture is the what we're doing. It's like what specific content we are creating. Okay, so what does this look like if you're a creator? Well, the why is the foundation, and this is a thing that tends not to change. Like, so for us, the why is to help people live their best life. So the foundations of a house are very, very unlikely to change over time. But one thing that might change over time is the how. So right now for us, the how is that we create inspiring educational content in order to help people live their best life. The live their best life bit's not gonna change, but the how, inspiring educational content, is probably gonna stay the same for at least a few years, but it could change. It's like adding an extra room to the house or like demolishing a wall. It's a bit of a faff. You can do it, but it takes quite a lot of work. And so you don't wanna do it very often. Maybe you will remodel your house every few years, adding a new kitchen, add a new conservatory, that kind of thing. And so for us, one thing we're thinking about is that for the last 4 years, it's been focused on inspiring educational content. But now we're thinking, should we add an extra room where we're talking about the idea of community? Can we build a community around our stuff, which still helps people live their best life because that's our foundation that doesn't change, but it helps add something to our how because we can do that over time. And then the what is the furniture in the house. And the furniture in the house is more likely to change on a somewhat more regular basis. You can decide you want to add in a new wardrobe or get rid of a TV or replace a TV or replace a Mac or replace an iPad, whatever. The furniture and stuff in the house can change over time. And the what, when it comes to a creative business, is what specific content are you creating? Because to be honest, for most of us, the how is content plus products in some capacity. And for most of us, the why is to help people do something or other. So help people get better at cooking, help people feel more entertained, help people live their best life, help people read more books, whatever the thing is that your creative thing wants to do, help people get more money for their business, help people generate more leads, get more clients, whatever that thing is, that is unlikely to change. But then the how for most of us is going to be through the form of content, product, community, something like that. But then the what, which is the ultimate age-old question of what the hell do I make videos about? Or what do I write about on my blog? Or what do I write about in my book? Or what do I create TikToks or Instagram about? The what is the thing that might well change over time. And so again, down below, we've got more interactive exercises for each of these 3 different ways of like thinking about your niche. The good to great way of thinking about your niche in terms of the hedgehog concept, the traction way of thinking about your niche in terms of core focus, and then our patent pending way of thinking about your niche in terms of sort of this house model, this start with why idea. And the idea is that you want to try and figure out what is your why that is unlikely to change, what is the how, realistically probably content and products, and then what is the what right now? What is the what that you're creating right now to help live up to your why? And then what is the what that you might want to do 6 months from now or a year from now? Because your niche in terms of what you make videos about can and probably should change over time to reflect your own growth as an individual and to reflect probably the way your audience will develop over time. Generally, for most creators, the stuff they started making videos about 4 years ago when they started is not the same as the stuff they're making videos about 4 years later today, or however long that journey has been. But generally, for most creators, the why behind it, like the underlying core motive, the core focus, is the same throughout. So this was a very, very long explanation of like 3 different ways to think about the idea of finding a niche. And the reason this is so long, the reason there are so many of them, there are still so many more. There are tons of business books we've got on the bookshelf, we've got around that talk about different ways of finding your niche. These are the 3 personally that I found the most helpful to think about stuff in our business and that our students in the Part-Time YouTuber Academy have found the most useful as well when we've been doing coaching calls with them. And so this has probably created more questions than answers for you, and that's totally okay because this is a difficult question to answer. Please do have a go at the interactive exercises down below, and hopefully those will give you some more clarity on this question of what the hell is your niche? And then in the next lesson, we're going to talk about the idea of a target audience. So thank you very much for watching. Please do the exercises and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.